Namaste. Thank you, Samaran. Distinguished ministers, ICANN community members, colleagues from other Internet organizations, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all to ICANN's 57th public meeting. I'd also like to give a shout out to an old friend, Rajasankar Ramaraj, a former ICANN board member, well-known figure in India's Internet governance circles. I don't think he's here, but I think many, many of you know him and have felt the influence that he's brought to the development of the Internet and Internet industry in India. It's a pleasure to be here, home of the world's largest and perhaps most diverse and inclusive democracy. And by diverse, we're talking about more than 50 political parties in India. I used to think that ICANN had more than enough diverse factions, but I'm sort of pleased that I don't have to survive in this environment. Home to 22 official languages, which means that India benefits greatly from our internationalized domain names program. And in fact, so far, India leads the world in terms of having the most successfully evaluated country codes, IDNs. That number currently stands at 15, and I believe there's more to come. So Indians embrace their diversity and do not take democracy for granted. In the Indian election of 2014, we're told that about 551 million voters cast a ballot. And I'm tempted to make a joke about the American elections, but I won't. Donald Trump is worried there'll be that many votes and it's rigged, but no, I digress. It's indeed great to be in a country whose inclusive democratic ideals parallel ICANN's own. It's also worth noting that this nation's democracy is thriving no less than its IT sector. This city, Hyderabad, is at the forefront of India's technological future. Indians view that future through a lens of history that dates back many centuries. So it's fitting that we're meeting at this place and at this time, since ICANN too is looking to the future in the context of its very recent past. I'm referring, of course, to the fact that last month, the United States government formally ended its stewardship of ICANN's management of the IANA functions. This is a long-planned move. Visible part in the last 2 years involved many people, but there was quite a bit that preceded that. And it was the final step in allowing the international Internet community to oversee ICANN's handling of these functions, as opposed to just having the U.S. government do it. The global community will also help guide our organization in its important mission to help maintain the security, stability, and resilience of the greatest communication and information network man has ever created. And there were a few women in there too. It's also you who made this happen. When we talk about ICANN, there's a board, there's a staff, and there's a very large, vibrant community, and that's what makes things go. Community representatives toiled for hundreds of hours to develop the transition proposal that the U.S. government ultimately accepted. It can be argued that the transition was, to some degree, just symbolic, but it cannot be denied that it also marked a historic moment in history of a fully independent and global Internet, and again, it happened because of you. So on behalf of the entire board, I want you to know that you have our respect and our gratitude. Thank you, and congratulations. That's a big applause for everybody. We're having a small reception tomorrow evening at 6:30 on the lawn of the adjoining Novotel Hotel. Please be there, please come. I also want to express gratitude to the members of the ICANN organization who worked tirelessly in support of the community, and to Joran, our current CEO, who came in and helped make sure that we implemented everything that you, the community, had asked for. So thank you to the organization, to the men and women that put in unbelievable hours round the clock, on the call, all the time. And I think it's appropriate and fair that we also add our thanks to a man who made the transition a top priority during his leadership of ICANN. I'm talking, of course, about our previous CEO, Fadi Shahadi, who brought his unique energies to this issue. Do we have a picture of him, perhaps? The transition was very much like scaling a mountain, and as a team, we reached the summit and can clearly envision the peaceful valley that lies before. No picture. So we've reached the mountain, and that's the good news. And also good news is that there is the prospect of a nice valley before us, but unfortunately more mountains to scale not too far ahead. So this is not a time to rest, except briefly. It's a time to gather our energies, refocus, and plow on in the future. In the wake of the transition, our core work continues, and in fact, there's been a substantial community work on a number of important issues. Here in Hyderabad, there will be further community discussions on a number of issues, such as the review of all rights protection mechanism in all GTLDs, next generation registry directory services to replace WHOIS, retirement of CCTLDs and review mechanism for the decisions on delegation, revocation, and retirement of CCTLDs, and a framework for the use of country and territory names as TLDs. So our gratitude to all of you who support and contribute to these efforts and many others that are on the way. I'm also aware that substantial community time and effort is going into meeting the requirements of the new bylaws. The new bylaws run hundreds of pages. It occurred to me this morning that we should have a complexity index, sort of like difficulty of reading, and see what we can do to reduce the complexity over the future. The board is aware that a lot of community work needs to be done, and there will be many opportunities in the coming months for further collaboration in that area. Also, with the transition behind us, we will now have time to focus and continue to solidify our technical operations, while at the same time increasing the understanding of ICANN's limited, though important role within the Internet ecosystem. ICANN was created around the IANA functions, yet few understand those functions or our new and slightly changing role in their management. The transition gave rise to the formation of a new nonprofit public benefit organization called Public Technical Identifiers, or PTI. It is a controlled affiliate of ICANN and now performs the IANA functions under contract with ICANN. I can tell you that the transition was very smooth, and that all of the transactions on a daily basis for updating the root zone and the related activities are now taking place under the new regime, with NTIA out of the loop completely, the relationship with VeriSign working just as smoothly as it was before. It's really quite excellent. The security of the domain name system is another important priority of ICANN, of course. We're currently involved in a carefully planned effort to change or roll over, as we say, the cryptographic keys that help secure the domain name system. This is an unprecedented effort, and it will conclude about a year from now. We're involved in global effort to make sure that network operators, internet service providers, and other technical players are well aware of the pending rollover and are prepared for it. Our goal is to make certain that none of them will be locked out once the cryptographic keys are changed. This is a pretty big deal. We hope it goes completely smoothly, and it's the kind of thing that, from a conceptual point of view, ought to be done relatively quickly, but an extraordinary amount of caution, care, testing, communication, etc., is being put into this. It's also important that we understand and openly engage in a dialogue around the business aspects of the domain name system. Nothing stays the same. We understand pretty well the position we're in, but the Internet is an agent of change, and likely we will see changes in the environment, and we feel obliged to embrace that rather than either ignore it or resist it. Among other things, one hears a lot about the Internet of Things that will bring a very, very large number of new devices not tied to individuals, and so the number of devices will be not measured by the population of the world, but measured by some other big numbers. How will that transform the naming marketplace is obviously of key importance. So a robust discussion will take place and will help us prioritize our future endeavors and our approach. We know full well the world is watching closely, very closely, how a post-transition ICANN community handles its newfound role, and much of its focus will be on those of you who are involved in ICANN and in our collective responsibilities of accountability and transparency. And I have to say the board is 100% supportive. There have been times when it was not thought that that was the case. I can assure you from the beginning the board was always very supportive. I don't want to get into an argument about it, but there was less resistance, in fact zero resistance, despite what anybody might have thought. Much of the focus, as I said, will be on the people who are involved directly. This meeting is the first post-transition ICANN meeting, and it will be scrutinized and probably overanalyzed, but I have every confidence in the community, the board, and the ICANN organization. I wish you all a good, productive meeting.